Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. You can't see my screen, but don't worry, it's coming. Just getting a couple of more things set up, logged in, all that good stuff. Figured I'd get on the mic first, rant a little, talk about the red days. Any news? The most interesting thing lately was the Coinbase ERC20 support that is coming. Still seeing some names pumping on that news. But all around, not a good day. You guys see the stock market? I know you don't want me talking about the stock market, but it's been down. I'm not laughing. Well, I am, but I mean, it's down. But I've got some good put options and some short positions that continue to grow in profitability. So let's see here. I've got my screens up. I think I'm ready to go. Let me pull up the charts. One more tab. And then we shall begin. So the scheduled duration of this live stream is going to be about an hour. I will talk cryptos. I will talk a little bit of stocks. Not a whole lot, but we will. And mostly cryptos, and then we'll take a look at your guys' charts. We'll go from there. So let me pull up the chat box here. Hopefully the screen's up. I think you guys can see it by now. A couple of things to note. Let me clear some of these lines, and we will jump right to it. I've got some alerts set and all this fun stuff, so if things start pinging when I'm talking, even better. Be a little bit more exciting. So, man. All right, let me see. I've got the chat box up. Got the folks coming in here. We've got about 150 people joining already. Appreciate everybody being here. There are some good names to look at, and I will be pointing out things that I like, things that I'm watching. But first and foremost, let's just be very clear. Anything I talk about here is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations to buy or sell anything. I will maybe talk about things that I am personally doing, but as always, do your own research, do your own due diligence, and make your own decisions. At the end of the day, it's your capital, it's your money. You guys got to decide what you want to do, and at the end of the day, you can't blame anybody else. But if you make $1 million, I mean, come on, send me a little donation or something. So, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a financial advisor. Let's get to it. Look at this. Bitcoin. First off, there has been this lower support trend line that a lot of folks have been watching, and we are right there. We're bumping right up to it here. We had the big washout low in February that hit that pretty close. And then here about a week and a half ago, we hit that around 7,300, and here we are testing it again. And we'll see if this holds. It could be a significant break. If it does not hold on the upper bound, you are also seeing a similar trend line. And so this thing is getting very narrow in terms of resolving itself one way or the other here pretty soon. And, you know, I know we've been watching this market and it's like, oh, it's volatile and it's up and it's down. And I mentioned this last time, you know, when you look at the big scheme of things compared to where we've been here in the last couple of months, yeah, this is kind of annoying. And it's like we're up and then we're down. But this is a relatively small range compared to some historical movement that we've seen. I think it just feels worse because we're just all ready for some trending action. The least fun markets are these sideways kind of choppy markets. They're just no fun. We want some trending, even if it's short-lived, a couple of weeks, trending up, trending down. Give us something, right? Some direction. But just kind of has been this choppy action for a little bit here, and it's no fun, and it does get old. It makes for some short trades here and there, but any kind of longer term holds or even swing trading is pretty tough right now. Like we saw this bounce here over a couple of days last week, made for some very nice trades. You know, we saw Icon and Binance and Tron, and a lot of these names have really nice pumps off the lows, and we're seeing them pull in right now. And so I'll go into those specific names that I like. But this big wedge that's really starting to tighten up here, got to keep an eye on this here on the downside. You know, even if it dips down below a little bit, it could dip and close above, but a close below last week's low around 7,300 is going to be pretty bearish. So I would be cautious. You could see the selling accelerate at that point. Maybe we get that final capitulation, that sell off, and then that marks the low. So that's kind of the main thing to keep an eye on here in the next couple of days. Then near term, below that trend, right, there's this tighter trend that you can watch here, which would also signal a rise above the declining 10 EMA on the daily chart. And so getting back above this would be kind of the first early signal, but we could also just meander in here through April, you know, first week of April, and do one of these and then figure out where we go from there. But this will resolve itself between now and mid-April, and most likely before then, because usually charts don't go all the way to the apex of one of these wedges. They tend to resolve themselves pretty early on. So I'm betting in the first week of April, we will break above or below one of these trend lines and see how it goes from there. So that's what I'm looking for here in the near term. Look for that potential break of this downtrend. So on the positive, and then you always got to look at both sides. Bullish scenario and the bearish scenario. But let me show you guys what I'm watching here. On the bull case, I mentioned the potential of an inverted head and shoulder pattern forming here on this daily chart, with the left shoulder being that low around the 8,200 mark. The head, this most recent dip into the 7,300 area, and the neckline being here, basically connecting the two highs. And then the most final shoulder, the last third trough, as they call it, being that there. And so this is still a potential that is in play. I'm watching this here. And so this would be invalidated if we basically close below, you know, this most recent low here. So we're right there. I mean, it's got to bounce now, or this is going to be off the table, in my opinion, because if it gets much deeper, then you're going to basically be at the same level as the head portion of this pattern, and that pretty much invalidates it. You need 3 troughs, with the 2 sides being shallower than the middle one. What keeps this in place still is the fact that generally the head has some of the higher volume in the pattern. So far, that's relatively some of the higher pattern, you know, kind of drifts lower as it builds up. We're seeing a little bit of that. And so the way this works is the official breakout point is this neckline, so this slanted shoulder here. And so that would be around 87 to 8,800 right now. That's the official breakout. Personally, if I start seeing this rise and start heading up, I'm going to take an early entry in anticipation of a breakout, and then go from there. But not doing anything with it just yet from a trading perspective. It's still a potential pattern that I'm watching as far as a bottoming formation. But we got to see some upside follow through first. So going to the 1 hour, you can see we had the nice little move off the low yesterday. On that 1 hour, it stalled out around $8,200, went flat for a few hours, and then just gave it all up relatively quickly. And here we are, just kind of meandering, a little bit of, not, I wouldn't say an equilibrium pattern. I mean, it's kind of more of a bearish pennant, bearish flag here, but it's meandering here. And the thing to note here is that 10 EMA, and I've mentioned this a lot, but that continues to be the place of resistance. So we've rallied into that, we've rallied into that, rallied here into that, and then yesterday on that rally, that's where it failed, and we're reversing back from it. So in the very near term, that 4 hour chart needs to start taking out that point in price for it to at least start turning the corner and changing the momentum a little bit. So until then, most of these rallies are just bounces into that. So That's kind of the near-term view. You can take a longer-term view if you want to look at the 12-hour or the daily. It just depends on the strategy. You know, if you're doing more longer-term holds or swing trades, you definitely zoom out a little bit more and wait for some good upside confirmation. A little bit more active trading like what I do. I'll tend to do 1-hour charts, 4-hour charts, and then when I actually go to make an entry, then I'll zoom in much more and look at what are the very short-term time frames, just to get a little bit more precision on the price there. But at that point, you're talking, you know, maybe a couple percent at that most. So that's what I'm looking at on BTC here. But for now, it's just not very strong here. Unfortunately, just still continues to lag. Hasn't been a ton of bad news per se. It's just kind of the downward pressure. And so that kind of leads me to a different topic of discussion, and then I'll move off of the Bitcoin side. But, you know, I've heard people talk about the death cross is coming. That's still out there. You guys know where I stand on that. But then there was also someone, you know, I've heard a couple people here saying Bitcoin is not in a bear market. And I just don't understand that comment. How can we say that Bitcoin is not in a bear market when it has corrected at one point 69, 70% from the highs, and still we are down, you know, a good portion from the highs here, and that, you know, we're still down 60%. So, and if you look at the alt market, even more painful. You look at the coin market cap. We topped out at around 800 and, you know, just a little over 800 billion. And here we are, 300 billion. So at what point do we officially enter the bear market? I don't understand that comment. We have been in a bear phase for quite some time. And maybe when they finally say it's a bear market, that'll mark the bottom and then it'll be over. So I don't know. But if you're not convinced, yes, this is a bear market. Yes, it's a bear trend, but that doesn't necessarily mean it goes forever and it goes straight down to 3K, like a lot of other folks are saying on the other extreme, where they're saying, oh man, we're down 70% and it's going down, you know, from here to 3K and that's it. It's like, okay, no, that's a little bit extreme to the other side. Yes, it's just a 3-month bear, but in crypto, 3 months, man, that's a long time. 3 months in crypto is like 9 months in the stock market. Maybe longer, actually. Maybe like a year. But so anyway, we are in a bear trend, a bear phase, whatever you want to call it. But it is bearish. There's no doubt about that. So the pressure is certainly to the sell side, and the sellers have remained in control. But I'm still hopeful that this was the low, this low here, this washout down here around 6K. But we've got to see some upside confirmation at that point. But yeah, everybody's getting really bearish now, right? It's like news outlets and CNBC and a lot of the, you know, the newer YouTuber folks and stuff like that. So my position, my point of view is stay objective, okay? I mean, it's good to anticipate one way or the other and have some targets to the upside and to the downside, but don't get so bearish that you're not going to make any trades, and don't get so bullish that you're just like a perma bull and I will hodl to the very bottom. You got to be a little bit flexible and open-minded, because you guys have seen this. The market turns on a dime very quickly, right? And just be flexible, because you'll be late to the game when it does, and you'll miss out on some potential good entries. And lastly, right, if you truly believe crypto is not dead and it's not going away like I do, then you make those buys when it's the most scary and the blood is on the streets, as they say, and everyone is declaring it dead. And suddenly we're at these long-term support levels, and that's when you start taking a look at some things here. So just my thoughts, guys. Just gotta be a little bit more balanced here. So All right, let me. I'm kind of looking at some of these comments here, and appreciate all your guys' thoughts on all of this stuff and some of the feedback and all that fun stuff. All right, so nonetheless, my trading account is in cash right now. I've been sitting tight, took some profits here over the last couple of days, and just waiting this out. Let's see where it goes. All right, so let me go through some of the big names here. So we covered Bitcoin. We talked about some of those. Let's go through the other biggies. That one's really been getting smacked down here as of late. And so a couple of things to note on the Ethereum side here. So it's certainly breaking down through support levels right now. We're basically back near the point where this washout low happened a couple of weeks ago, right around that 450 mark. And the very strong support low that I'm watching, if this continues to break down here, is this $400 area, which was the prior big breakout that we had. Last year, we had that big run that initially topped around 400. Then we had to pull back to 160. Then we had a second rally that went almost to the same point, pulled back, and we started to form this big ascending triangle base that ultimately broke out. And when it broke out from 400, for the next couple of months, along with many other names, it just went very parabolic here, and we went to 1400. And so we fully have retraced that, and we're near that 400 point again. ZRX is breaking down here. We'll get to that one. And so here's kind of the zone now that I'm starting to watch on Ethereum, and looking at making some potential long-term entries here myself, just because we're kind of in this buy zone, if you will, with support being 400. And so current prices, I mean, if you go from here down to that $400 area, it's about a 10% range. And so that's what I'd be looking at. Crypto, were you sending me a message here? I'll get back to you, man. But I'm looking forward to meeting you, my friend. So yeah, so this range is kind of the zone that I'm looking at for ETH to find a good support area and a potential long-term bottom here. And so you got to pay attention to that. If I was thinking about, do I buy it here, do I sell here? A lot of people are seeing the price and they're starting to panic. So we might see that capitulation bottom. Me personally, I would not be selling at this point anymore. And at this point, I would write it down to at least 400 and see where it goes. It's only another 10% down from here. And I'm thinking we're going to see some support on this one. So that's the ETH. And I don't think it's going to go away, guys. I know there's the next Ethereum. Every day it's announced the next Ethereum, the Ethereum killer. But I think ETH is going to stay. So versus BTC. This is where the picture is not as pretty. It's a little bit in kind of no man's land from a support perspective. We're kind of testing this last bit of resistance here, which is now support. So versus BTC, maybe that's the level that we start to find some support in. And you can just see how oversold this is and has been for a couple of weeks now versus Bitcoin. And so I continue to think it's closer to the bottom than it is to the top. Let's just put it that way. We are very near a low, in my opinion, on these names. So I'd be watching that. And hey, maybe when ETH bottoms and starts to turn around, that officially kicks off for the next alt season. And so got to pay attention to that one here. That's definitely a leader, and it tends to lead some of the alts. Litecoin. So there was a LightPay news yesterday. Turns out it was another scam, another disappointment for the crypto community. The idea of it just sounded really good, and a lot of people said, well, it was probably too good to be true. We do need something like that in the ecosystem. And I know there's other things being worked along those lines, but nonetheless, LTC took a pretty good hit on the news. You can see this bar was the kind of announcement. Charlie Lee comes out and, he didn't have to, but he apologized to everybody for, kind of overhyping it. And he was disappointed along with the Litecoin Foundation and everybody else. But they took a pretty good hit on that. And Litecoin continues to drift lower versus Bitcoin here. On the USD pair, it's pretty much the same story, right? We just has been in this downtrend. If you go to the daily chart here, just starting to break down, starting to accelerate here a little bit. And so remember what happened last time, and this always happens, guys. Nothing ever moves straight up or straight down forever. And when things start to go exponential, whether up or down, you're kind of nearing the end of the move. And so if this thing really starts to break down and you see this, you know, after the long pull down, it does one of these where it just kind of goes parabolic, that tends to mark the end of a move, at least for the near term. We saw that happen back here where it finally broke down. And so, you know, it's really scary in those moments, but I would hesitate to sell into one of those panic drops. So where do we find support on this one? Well, the first test, just like ETH, is right at that washout low we saw about a week and a half ago over the weekend. And so right now that's about 137 or so for Litecoin. Below that, on a closing basis, it's not closed below this 125 area. And so that little range there is kind of the level I'm looking at for a potential bottom. That would also bring the RSI into these oversold conditions. And so maybe that marks the low. So between here and 125, 124 so is the level that I'm watching for Litecoin to potentially find some support here. All right, let me see. Dash is another one here. Dash. This one's very similar to ETH from a long-term perspective here. Let me go to the USD pair. And so I'll clear that line there. But the thing to pay attention to here is it's just now poking below this long-term support area. And if you want to be a little bit more conservative, you can say these two double tops that finally broke out. And that was the big bar that broke out above that. And that happens to be around that 360 area. And we've tested this level a couple of times now, also nearing these oversold conditions. And so that's the level I'm watching on Dash here, is this 360. Can it hold and start to turn around? And if it can, ultimately, you're going to wait for some upside confirmation, a break of that downtrend. And once that pattern begins to reverse, then it could be, you know, the change in the direction here for the intermediate term. I'm talking weeks to maybe months, if this can start to turn around here. So that's kind of the big picture on Dash. I'll be watching that. All right, let's see here. Looking at some comments here. When ETH bottoms its alt season, I think so. And some of the alts have buy 10-year bonds. So let me take a quick hiatus. Let's take a look at the stock market. I know some of you guys are following that stuff, and I do have some open positions in the stock market. And so I mentioned in my last stream last week that I was kind of going short already, building up a short line here in a couple of areas. And there's a couple of things. When you look at stocks, I mean, unless you're doing some high margin trading, you know, you generally don't look at the hourly charts or stuff like that, like we do in the crypto space and stocks, which kind of makes it easy from that perspective because you don't have to watch it every second. I generally will look at daily and the weekly charts. And so I'll do that for my big picture analysis, and that's what I'll use as my gauge to take positions in. And then I'll kind of check on them from time to time, not every day or every hour like I will crypto. But one thing I mentioned here is the market has put in a big double top. If you look at the weekly chart, there's been this big double top established. The RSI has certainly been lagging significantly, and all the major indices are forming the same pattern with this double top, this big lag, and even some of the major drivers. Apple, for example, has been lagging for a long time. You look at the RSI, has really been dropping as this price moves up. That just tells you that the momentum is waning. Here, this is confirmation that it's breaking down. And the last time we saw that happen, right, was back here where Apple had the big RSI lagging as the price was going up. And sure enough, you know, when it finally broke down, it had a pretty big breakdown at that point, went down around 30%. And so we're seeing something similar. And when you start to see the leaders do stuff like that, you're going to see it spill over into the other side of the market. The financials are really getting hammered, have been one of the weaker areas. The home builders are getting hit very hard, one of the areas. And so there's a couple of areas, the semis, some of the technology areas is mostly where I've been shorting. Facebook, that's news driven, but smacked. I probably wouldn't short that one now. It's already come down a lot. But continues to sell off. And last year we saw record numbers in the stock market, and I think we're going to see some more downside. And so you got to wait for those bounces if you want to take advantage of some of the downward pressure. It's kind of the opposite of buy the dip, right? When something's in a bull mode, you kind of buy the dip. This you kind of short the rallies. And so not pretty. Ladies and gentlemen, the market has been taking a hit. I mentioned the metals last time. Gold, keep an eye out on this one. It looks like it's potentially trying to break out from a very long-term base here on the weeklies. If it gets above 1400, that's pretty much the official breakout, but keep an eye on that one here. So that's my quick side note on the non-crypto space. Now let's get to some other charts here. So I mentioned Binance coin here, one I really like, one I've been kind of trading in and out of here over the last couple of weeks. Had that good rally. Let me go to the 4-hour. Had that good rally last week. Went right into resistance around $14 and is now pulled back right to this breakout point between $10 and $11. And so far it's trying to hold, and it may offer up a good secondary entry point. The reason I'm still waiting is mostly because of Bitcoin, just kind of taking the cues off of BTC. But that's the area that I'm watching on Binance. It needs to hold that 1060, 1050 mark. And if it starts to turn around here, then I'll be looking to jump back on the trade there. But I like this one long term. Obviously, one of the better exchanges out there, doing a lot of good things. And so if they continue to do well and the crypto space starts to turn around, then this will be a direct beneficiary to that. So which is why I like it. So Binance USD pair is kind of holding this 10 EMA. It's a textbook pullback. You had that big run up. You're pulling back on lighter and lighter volume. And so we need to see if this holds, but that's the level I'm watching there. Some of the bigger names kind of reacted to that news yesterday. Basic attention token, big move off the bottom there. Very nice, turning the corner here. You know, this has only been 2 days in, right? So we want to see some more to see if that's going to hold, but that's very encouraging, especially the level of volume that is showing up there. If you go to the 4-hour charts, this has just been moving up on very big volume. Definitely hit some overbought conditions here in the short run. So look for a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a pullback, but definitely one of the stronger names here over the last day. I've seen a little bit of profit taking show up. If you go to the hourlies, you can see that high volume reversal here starting to show up. A little bit of profit taking here, but just very strong off the lows. That's good news. Looks like that one's turning the corner. 0x has been another one that had that reaction to the Coinbase news there. You can see the big pump that happened and it pulled right back in. But if you zoom in a little bit, it's kind of turning the corner, looking like it found a little bit of a low here around that 7,200 Satoshi level. And now it's turning the corner and moving higher there. And so watch 0x. I mean, this is clearly it's news driven, so those tend to be a little tougher to trade and such. But strictly looking at the charts, holding up well back to the secondary entry point. So looking at that one there. Some other names that had a pretty decent reaction here. Let me go to your Golem. There's a name from yesteryear. Had that initial pop, not following through as much, but trying to find a little bit of a low. The daily chart is just still not healthy, though. I mean, the daily chart is just in this big downtrend for the most part, near term. Trying to see a little bit of volume come in, but not as much follow through there. Augur, Aragon, some of those names had that initial move there. So let me go to the other one here. There's on Kraken, but okay. So we covered ETH, we covered Dash, Litecoin, Binance. Let's go to Icon. There's another name that I'm liking here. And if BTC can decide to settle out and bottom out, this is probably one of the first names that I'm looking at. And so we had that big rally, very strong move off the lows. Look at the volume on this pullback, though. It's been relatively contained, and right now it's right back to that moving average. And so keeping an eye on that. From a fib analysis, it's just below that 382 retracement level. And so, you know, it's in a pretty good buy zone here, in my opinion. It could go lower. The most I want to see this go is right to the breakout point, which would be just above the 618 level. And so this is kind of the buy zone, in my opinion. Still a wide range. Strong support should come in here at this breakout point, but I'd like to see it hold up a little bit higher. But the way you do that is just going to wait this out. So I'm going to wait for this near-term downtrend to confirm to the upside and start turning the corner here. You can see the momentum is trying to come back in here on this bull index. So got to keep an eye on this one. This one's probably near the, at the top of my watch list in terms of good buys on the secondary entry points. So this one and Binance, a couple of others. Tron has been strong. Now Tron, I'm not so much sold on as much as I am like Icon as far as a longer term trade goes. However, I have been trading it, and so I'm not against trading a good setup and a good chart, and this one definitely looks good. The volume has been very strong off the lows. Right now it's setting up here, kind of tightening up. You could almost argue this is a little bit of a cup and handle forming on the 4-hour chart. And if it is going to play out, we're not going to want to see this pullback get much deeper. Maybe sit around this level, and what you want ultimately to look for is the reversal in trend and a new breakout, and that would set up another leg up here. But can't argue with the chart. It's looking very strong, has been very strong as of late, and continues to hold up well. Looks like it's finally found a pretty good bottom here after this mega pullback that it had from the peaks here in January. And so right now it's kind of setting up almost a little bit of a bull flag here. It looks like it wants to break out. So can't argue with that chart, no doubt. Let's see here. Some other ones. Before I get to your guys' charts, some names I had on my hit list here. Oh, ENJ, Engine Coin. Here's another one that had a pretty decent breakout. You can almost say that this was a nice inverted head and shoulder pattern here on this 4-hour chart. Broke out from that point, has rallied, tested that breakout level a few times, and so far is holding up. And so a lot of these names, it's just the pressure, the downside pressure in Bitcoin that is holding a lot of these rallies. And I'm thinking that once Bitcoin decides to find a low and starts to show some strength, a lot of these are going to be the first names that start to pop out and get some momentum here. So ENJ, one I'm liking here. Long-term chart, looks like it's finally turning the corner as well. Some very strong buy volume coming in here in the last couple of days. And also above the 10 EMA on the daily, which is now turning the corner and moving higher. Now we just got to see some follow through to the upside on some of these names. All right, let me see here. Let me go through my list. So what do you guys think? What's going to be added to Coinbase next? I know it's still a ways out, but it's coming. OMG, everyone keeps saying that. I'm thinking that one's one of the names. Enigma. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Ontology. Everybody wants to talk Ontology. All right, let's take a look at that one. So we'll do ENG. So yeah, this one's looking pretty good here too on this daily chart. Really trying to turn the corner here. Look at that volume that's come up. And again, good secondary entry point. These are pulling right back to this moving average here. That's what I like to see, especially on lighter volume on that pullback. Bull momentum index is still, in the zone here, still up here, not bad. But that's what I'm looking at. So this is definitely one to keep on the watch list, especially if the market decides to find a low here near term. A little bit of a bull flag there. Let's go to the 4-hour chart, see how that one looks. Almost looking pretty good. Not bad. And see, the thing what I like about these is you see the volume right on the upside. It's much stronger than the volume on the downside. And so it just shows you accumulation happening here at the lows. And so shaping up well. Ontology. All right. I don't even have to look at the chart to tell you this one's probably overbought near term. But let's take a look at the chart. So Ontology, very young chart, had that nice breakout, right? About to do an IPO or ICO breakout here from the initial listing here on the index, on the exchange, excuse me. So that's kind of the level to watch. And we basically rallied right up to that. A lot of profit taking came in right there, which is not unusual, because that's anybody who was holding here and held through this, they're kind of cashing out there. But the volume here at the lows has been very strong, and it's it's kind of one of the bigger, if not the biggest, neo based token here in a long time. And so this one is just really strong here, and can't argue here, but it does feel a little overbought near term. And I'd like to see it base out. Best thing would be if it could just base out right below this resistance point here and put in a little bit of a flag or a base or a little bear flag or something, or bull flag. And then that will let these RSI levels cool off a little bit. And that would give it enough upside room so that it could have a much stronger breakout. Because what will happen is if it breaks out now, you know, this RSI is already up here near 80. And sure, it could go a little bit higher, but you're going to be capped, right? The upside momentum will be short-lived, in my opinion, if it breaks out now. And then you'll get that consolidation that you need. And so it's just much stronger if that consolidation happens here at these levels, sub-breakout point, and then that just makes for a much stronger rally when it does decide to break out. So all around, this one's good. I know there's a lot of good about the project. And so if you like this one long-term, you know, pay attention to it here on this breakout point, but looking pretty good. Everyone's talking about it now, and I think it just needs a little bit of a pause. Now that I said that, it's going to go like 10x from here. All right. So Ont, 0x, BAT, proof of authority token. I'm not sure how much history we're going to have on this chart here. Let's go look. Yeah, we got enough. We got enough to do some analysis here. So here's the 12-hour. You can see just clearly has been stair-stepping its way higher. Again, one of the stronger names in this market here near term. What's the market cap on this guy here? So still, I would call micro cap. Anything 100 or less is micro in my opinion. So $84 million, small, especially if this has the potential that everyone believes it does. And so probably has plenty of upside left in my opinion, but it's a matter of timing. Where do you get in, you know, what levels, etc. But here it looks like it's about to break out personally. I mean, just it's setting up. The volume's there. It looks like it really wants to get going, even though, yes, it's already had a move off the lows. It's up, excuse me, 50%. But when you got a small cap name like that, 50% is kind of a small move, relatively speaking. So setting up here pretty good. Almost a little bit of a, you know, an irregular kind of cup and handle, but you got this high here at this point. You can see the pullback. You can see volume coming in on the right side, putting in a little bit of a handle, dipping back to that moving average. And so I want to see this thing start taking off by breaking out above that. But this one's looking pretty good here. Should be on the watch list, definitely. As far as trading goes, yeah, it's on the watch list now. From a long-term hold, I haven't done anything with it, but it's looking attractive here. Yeah, you like their symbol. A lot of these coins have very interesting logos and symbols here. All right, let me do OMG just because some of you guys are asking about that one. And I know that's got a big following, and it's not been moving as nicely as we have all hoped here as of late. But one thing I'm watching on this one is a little bit of a trend line that's starting to form here on the lower end. Let's see if these lows, these higher lows can stick. But this pattern is, I would say, very similar to the Bitcoin pattern, right? We hit the low, we've had this rally, the pullback here, almost a washout a couple of, you know, weeks, well, not even 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago or so. Now we're retesting it. So from a USD pair, you're seeing that, but you got to break this downtrend, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what we need to see. And this is getting close one way or the other. On the BTC side, has definitely not been one of the stronger names as of late, lagging here a little bit after being very strong when most names were really getting hit hard, right? So in the first half of the year, most names have had a significant pullback versus Bitcoin. And this one held up relatively well, but now it's kind of starting to lose that place a little bit. And we're seeing some rotation into some of the smaller names, some of the, you know, a little bit more higher movers, quick movers, and some of that. So OMG, still a little bit of downtrend, not looking particularly strong. And, you know, from a support level on the Bitcoin chart, this is the level to watch right here. You know, this prior base breakout, and we're not too far from that. Current price, we're still down about 8 to 10% from that level. So we're going to want to see this thing base out and find some support here above that point. Neo, poor Neo, just getting smacked. Still down here at the $57 range. Wow, Neo, come on already. I think Neo should be worth more than that, right, guys? But looking at Neo here, very similar to some of these other charts that I keep pointing out, guys, is look at this long-term pullback, right? You had this huge base that formed on Neo, had that big rally that took it to 200, just like we saw on ETH, just like we saw on Dash, and some of these other names, and they've pretty much retraced that entire move, and they're right above that breakout point now. And so this is where these names need to hold up. This is where they got to base out and start to find some support here, because this is kind of a long-term support area and could be a good long-term entry point, in my opinion. So watching these here on the BTC chart, just kind of in no man's land at this point. Definitely a little bit oversold here near term, but from a support perspective, you know, had that huge rally here and very few pauses along the way. I mean, you had 2 days of pause there, 2 days of pause there, but nothing substantial that you could call a real big base, right? And so there's not a lot of strong support along the way. Let's do a fib analysis on this to see if that lines up with anything on the Neo chart here. So if we do kind of peak to peak here, we're basically right at the 618 level. So it's interesting to see that almost corresponding with the big support coming up on the USD pair. And so this could be a good place to watch it here. We saw that big shakeout a week and a half ago, and that's where we found support. We're basically right there right now. And so if we do start to move higher, then this will establish a very strong double bottom. But you won't get confirmation until you clear this price point here. All right, so we've covered quite a few here quickly. We covered Icon, Litecoin, Neo, Dash, Omise, Go, Quantum was another name that was pretty strong here off the lows a week ago, but just kind of still pulling back here. A few false starts, but this one's really starting to pull back deep. And look at where that one finished the rally, right? This downtrend that's been in place for so long, that move off the low basically just took it to that downtrend, and so far, no follow through to break above that downtrend. Let's see, we talked to Tron. Let me go through the comments here. Let's do Bitcoin Cash. And so looking at Bitcoin Cash, the USD pair first. This one, let me go to this chart. It's more history on the Bitfinex side, but has been weaker than most names here too. Just really breaking down here. What I would caution you on this one is this descending triangle pattern that is forming here, and it's getting very tight. And this one's going to break one way or the other here pretty quickly. And you can maybe move this down a little bit, and kind of give it the close here and the close there. But in any case, you're getting pretty close. And generally speaking, this descending triangle pattern breaks to the downside. And so I'd be watching this zone here. What tends to happen is you'll get a break, maybe you'll get a rally into that, what is now support will become resistance, and then it'll continue lower. And so I'm watching that, keep an eye on this. It needs to break above this trend line to really start negating this pattern. And getting back above that $1,000 mark is going to be key here. So Bitcoin Cash, a little bit of a juncture, and I think we'll find out one way or the other between now and definitely before the end of the first week of April. So in the next week, we'll see which way this one goes. Versus BTC, kind of flat here, right? Just not a lot one way or the other versus Bitcoin. It's a little bit of a range here in the last 2 weeks and just sitting tight. I mean, it had these days where it's like outperforms a little bit, but for the most part, this is just flat, especially historically speaking. This one has kind of been all over the place versus Bitcoin. And here's just sitting real tight. So I'd be watching the USD pair as the particular chart for this one in terms of which way it's going to go next. Cardano. We have not done Cardano. So looking at Cardano, once it broke below this support level, you know, it looked like it was starting to have a rally here, but it just basically rallied right into that area that it broke down from. That's proven to be an area of resistance. It was enough to cool off the RSI from some very oversold conditions, took the RSI back up to 40, and here we are pulling back again. Not looking too good here, unfortunately. The next big base, I mean, below here, there's just not a lot of big support or anything. And so the next big level to look at is right there. From current prices, we are still another 27 to 30% down. Doesn't look like it on the chart, but that's where it is in terms of the next big support level. And that's if it breaks below this most recent low here that we had a few days ago. So let me close that. So this is what level I'm talking about here. If it can't hold on a closing basis, if it can't hold this area right here, and which we're basically right above now, then that's the next level to look at, is a little bit ways down still. Cardano. Is it just me, or are you guys ready for this alt season to kick off already? Man, how much lower can they go before they bottom out? All right, let me see here. Node 50K face reveal. 50K face reveal. Deal. I'll do it. Sounds like a good deal. I need to do it anyway so I can start joining some other channels like cryptos. Let's see. So I'm just checking out the comments here, guys. Reading some of the names here so that I can cycle through a couple of more names. So we did F. We did. Let me see here. Betty's handsome. I don't know. I doubt it. Don't build it up too much. All right. F. Oh, EOS. I haven't done EOS. Let's take a look at that one. ZIL, IOTA. Yeah. How are you forgetting Monero? I'm not forgetting Monero. We just haven't got to it yet. 8X. You want to do ADX? Next one down on my list. I keep an eye on this one, as you guys know. On the daily chart, you know, near term, I was looking like it was setting up here. I'm thinking it may have found the low, but I want to see some confirmation on the daily chart here. Definitely a lower volume name, so that makes it tough for trading. And when you do it, you got to keep the position real small on this one. But when they pump it, they can really move it fast. And so on this one, I'd be waiting for a clear breakout signal before doing anything with this one. Let's do Stratus. Man, Stratus was setting up pretty nicely last week and unfortunately got smacked down with this market here. So here's what I was watching on Stratus. This is Stratus BTC. And so last week I was watching this nice cup and handle form on the 4-hour chart. Was looking very nice. I took a position on it. It did break out and then it failed. It was a failed breakout, so you got to get out of the way. But was setting up nice. The positive, I guess if there's a positive, is it's so far holding this support area that it held on the pullback there. And so now we got to wait to see if that holds, look for some more upside confirmation. But, you know, it tried to break out there, even had some decent volume on the breakout, but just the failed breakout and the fact that BTC rolled over kind of put the squash on that to move. On the daily chart, that was a nice setup too, because that breakout kind of corresponded with the move off of the 10 EMA, but volume wasn't there. And when you see a bigger volume reversal, usually a warning flag, and so that's what I'd be watching here. But now you just got to see if this one holds. Stratus. Monero. So look at Monero BTC first. Just continues to pull in. I mean, just has lost a lot of steam. Also had that breakout attempt. Nice setup here versus BTC. Just like Omise Go, right? This was one of those names that just bucked the trend, really held up well versus Bitcoin compared to most of the other names, but has since really given it up and just lost a lot of momentum here. On the USD side, it's at a pretty good support level right now that needs to hold this 180 mark, give or take, but this 180 area is it a place that it needs a bounce? If it does, it'll set up a nice little bit of a double bottom here on this daily chart. But ultimately, you'll get confirmation when you're back above 240. But that's kind of what's in play right now near term is, do we hold this low around 180 or so and start to form a double bottom? I still like Monero long term, just near term has certainly been weaker of the bunch. Lumens. So looking at the stellar lumens, had that big low. I mean, this one on the USD pair got very low. Let me go to stellar. I know stellar on Polo has a USD pair, but man, you can see where this one went down to, 16 cents or so. We're back to 21, 22 here, but the downtrend, no doubt, is still very much in play. It's still strong. So this was a nice kind of oversold bounce attempt and a strong one at that, right? I mean, if you were brave enough to buy that low, that was a 64% move in 3 days. I mean, it's massive, but has just basically given all that up. For now, let's see if we make a higher low and start to turn the corner here, but it's got to get back above that $27 mark to kind of turn this corner here and change the tone of this one. Pivx had a move today. Pivx saw some big volume coming in off the lows after seeing similar action just a couple of days ago. And, when you see these big volume moves off the low, you got to pay attention because generally you'll see some follow through later on. But look at how crazy this action has been. You mean just get these big pumps and then they just sell it off and just these huge wicks off the top. But now it's starting to stick a little. And so you're getting a little bit of a bull flag secondary entry here form on this 4-hour chart. The moving average is catching up. Sell volume has been very light, especially compared to the prior 2 4-hour bars. And so this one's looking pretty good here. I like it here with a kind of a support / stop zone just right below this consolidation. If you zoom in a little bit more, go to the half-hour chart. That's the area to look at. But setting up here, see if we can see some follow through. See here. Let me go through some more of these here. We have not talked Vechain. We'll do the Vechain next. We'll do Walton, Wabi, and any other names that start with W that I can think of. So let's see here. Let's do Vechain. I know I've got that one on my list. If I don't, we'll pull it up. Vechain. So taking a look at this one, just looking at the 4-hour chart, this one also has been a little bit of a descending triangle forming here. It's right at support. Looks like it's rolling over, in my opinion. Just gonna, it's not holding. So my guess is it probably won't. And if it doesn't, that's going to be pretty significant because that was also the base back here. And we're kind of testing that support level. And it looks like it wants to go lower. And these next 2-3 days are going to really be important for this one, because if it's going to break this trend, it really has got to get above 41, 42 here relatively quickly. So we need to see some positive action on Vechain here soon. If not, a break below, you could see some pretty big selling because there wasn't, again, much of a pause on this one on the way up. And this is a huge run on the way up. And the last big base was this one, and that's basically where we're at right now. Below that, very few pauses until you get to back here where it was a little bit over a week of consolidation that formed a nice little setup. But other than that, you'll kind of be in no man's land. So watching this one, if you're holding it, I would be watching that support level very near term here. All right. Verge. Yeah, Verge has been actually, let me do the W's that I mentioned here. So Walton, one that I'm liking here, kind of turning the corner, seeing a little bit of action, some volume starting to come back in on this one here, and you can see this kind of rounded bottom on this chart here. But if you zoom in and then go to the 4-hour charts, again, similar accumulation pattern starting to show up, where you've got some big volume spikes coming in on the green here, right? And so when you start to see a lot of those, that's just some accumulation starting to show up here at the lows, which is good, right? You want to see that volume spike here at the lows as it starts to turn the corner, and it looks like it wants to go higher here. A clear break will be getting above this zone here, above that 180 or so. And so if it can start to clear that, that'll really start to signal that, hey, maybe this one's turned the corner. And you know, you're going to have a lot of resistance here. This big spike was the partnership announcement, I guess you want to call it that, and then it was followed by some other FUD, and just you know, Walton just did not have a good week that time, but kind of turning the corner here, see if it can break out. So near-term level to watch is just right overhead, and then that's going to be the big resistance. But even if it only gets to that point, I mean, that's still 30% higher from here. Wabi, let's go look at poor Wabi. So is Wabi done going down? You know, it's pretty close. I'm going to say probably. I think a lot of these alts personally are near the lows or at the lows already. But you're seeing, you know, some volume coming in here at the lows. Huge pullback on this guy. But you can see, look at this volume showing up here. Just big spikes. Go to the hourlies here on this guy. And this is a smaller cap name for sure. But, you know, this is profit taking here. Unfortunately, profit taking here near term. And you're seeing that result itself on the 1 hour as it rolls over. But on the 4 hours, you know, it kind of takes a little bit of a different tone. This is definitely profit taking here near term. So kind of being sold into that little bit of a rally right now. Makes sense because that's a little bit of a resistance point here, that prior base that broke down. And you'll see some profit taking going into resistance. And so that's a good segue into like a little bit of a lesson. People always ask me, hey, when you're doing your trading, how do you know where to set your stops, or how do you know where to take profits and that sort of thing? And there's two primary ways that I do it. One, which is one of the most important concepts when you're doing technical analysis, and that's support and resistance, right? So prior bases, which, you know, are areas of consolidation, congestion in the charts, you know, kind of some battling on the price. Prior bases, when they break down, tend to now become resistance on the way up, and vice versa. And so I'll look at support and resistance, and then I'll do measured moves and some indicator kind of projections, whether it's a fib analysis or you know, something like that, or where the next moving average is. And so that's another way to do it. But resistance very often is a good place to start looking at it in terms of where the chart could potentially take a pause. And you can see here, this one had that breakdown, and once it started to rally off the lows, me personally, I probably would have said, hey, this is where it pauses down here at this point, and I would have been tightening the stop or taking profit into that. Wasn't too bad of an area, but you can see this one actually went a little bit higher and into the next support resistance zone, almost to the penny. Let me clear that. You can see that long wick, and that was like almost exactly where it stopped, and now we're seeing that pullback. And so I use that as a guide, and then when I ultimately want to take profits, I always check out where the indicators are and kind of see if we're getting a little overheated to the upside or the downside. But that's a good way to do it. And, you know, these historical price points, I mean, you'd be surprised at how often that happens, where they bounce right into a resistance zone. And then you can do the same with moving averages. You can do, you know, you can see here on the daily chart on this decline, almost every rally has been contained by this moving average. It just kind of pops right into that place. And that's been the wall, right? Now it's trying to get above it, and you want to see it hold to the downside. So that's kind of how I do it. And then I'll do measured moves depending on the pattern and all that stuff. So that was my my daily lesson on technical analysis. All right, let's see here. Pickle in the house. Got a lot of folks from my groups coming in. Do you trade margin or only alts in and out? I do not trade margin in crypto. I do in other markets, but I don't in crypto. And I do use, and I don't only trade alts. I trade everything. I'll use, I'll trade all the cryptos, but I don't do margin on them. And I do use Tether in my trading account to park in, and it just depends on the exchange. So I use multiple exchanges, and it just depends, right? Like Bittrex, Binance have Tether, And so I will park into that. If you're not comfortable parking into Tether, then clearly your options are you park into either BNB coin or BTC on Binance. Other exchanges have different pairs. Some have ETH pairs. Some have NEO pairs. I think Polo has Monero pairs, right? So you got some of those. And so that's the alternative, is if you don't trust tethers, and I can totally understand that, then you got to park into some other pairs, or some people just have the goal purely of gaining BTC value, gaining Satoshis, regardless of what the price of Bitcoin is. And that's fair too, right? You're trading alts into back and forth into BTC. And so it just depends on what your goals are. EOS. Oh man, how did I miss the EOS? Can I adopt you? Man, we're going to start a big family of adoption here. So the reason I don't like margin, because you got to remember when you're playing with margin, you're basically using borrowed funds, and you're using the exchange's funds, and they're going to protect their capital. Meaning, if you're leveraged 10 to 1, so you're borrowing a lot on the value of your account, and the price drops 10%, that's 100% loss for you. And the exchange will not let you go below that point, and they will close you out if you don't have the capital to offset the loss. And so that's bad, because you can literally lose everything on a bad trade. And so that's why you don't margin, right? And like let's compare that to like the worst case scenario. You're buying an alt and it goes down 10% or it goes down 50%. I mean, if you wanted to, you could hold it as long as you want. You're not going to get margin called, and you can wait for a bounce, wait for it to come back in, and so you got to look at that. It's just very volatile, and the reason you want to use margin is because other than shorting, but is because of the leverage, right? Up or down. And in crypto, we don't really need the leverage. I mean, a 10% move in crypto is kind of normal, whereas in the stock market, it's the end of the world, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Can you trade gold like BTC or ETH? Is there an exchange for it? Yeah, most. It depends if you're buying gold futures, or if you're buying gold ETFs, or if you're buying gold stocks or gold options. I would recommend most standard platforms will give you access to that, right? Whether it's Interactive Brokers or one of those type of things. I mean, even a basic retirement platform like Scottrade or TD Ameritrade now, or whatever they're called, E-Trade, you can access gold future or gold options and ETFs and all that fun stuff. So yeah, you can just do it that way. You do it through your IRA even. Hey, what about that? Okay, let's keep going through some of these charts. So looking at EOS, this is one I like here off the lows. I mean, it had a nice rally. I did a little bit of trading on this one up the ways here. Also, look at where it paused right at resistance here. Basically rallied right into that little zone. That was the quote-unquote profit-taking zone on this trade. And you can see that's kind of where it stalled. Hit the wall, hit the wall, hit the wall, and then just had this pullback. But now it's giving you a secondary entry. The volume's really starting to come back in on this. So if we zoom in a little bit here on the daily chart, you can see here in the last couple of hours, we've had a lot of action coming back into EOS. This is versus BTC here. We'll take a look at the USD pair here in a sec, but you can see that pullback. This is generally a nice secondary entry point, right? You have that rally, pull back to a moving average, and now you want to see some upside follow through, ideally a close above the downtrend line there. If you want to be a little bit more conservative, you go to the 4-hour chart and you wait for a touchback to close to that moving average. But this one's close either way. Basically, it had this rally into this little zone again, and it's pausing, but it's looking pretty good. So it looks like it wants to resume the uptrend. Everything wants to, I think. It's just Bitcoin is kind of being this right now, and so we got to wait for this thing to to find a low here and settle out a little bit, but we'll see. It's tried a few times here in the last couple of days. Just no follow through just yet. Oh, let's see. Do I have tips for finding bottoms of dips? So that's a good question. There's a couple of ways to do that, right? There are, and bottom finding, bottom fishing is definitely not an easy game because you can get in early and it can continue lower. So there's no like 100% rule on the bottom dipping, but my favorite tool is probably the RSI. When it starts to hit extreme lows, 20 or below, you're pretty close, but it depends on how it got there. If the trajectory was a slow grind down and then it went like that, RSI can live at the lows for quite some time. If the trajectory was like a big dip crash and the RSI goes way down, those make for some very nice oversold bounce plays because most likely you'll get a little bit of a reaction and then maybe it'll go lower from there. But you look at the RSI. I look at moving averages to see how far stretched they are from the short-term moving averages. So like in this case, a 10 EMA, you can see at the lows here, this thing was 35% below the 10 EMA on the daily chart. That's a lot. And so when you start seeing a combination of very stretched to the downside, RSIs at the low, other indicators, right? Extreme bearishness, that's it. Crypto's dead. Don't ever buy it. After it's down this far, now people start saying, oh, it's going to 3,000 tomorrow. That usually marks the bottom. And so we're seeing some of that. We saw that in February. We're not quite there here near term, but and that applies to most time frames. If you do the 1 hours and you see those extreme dips, the big panic sells, then tends to mark a little bit of a low. Let me see here. I had some music playing in my background. What happened? Let me go check it out. Right. Let's see here. So we didn't do Verge. Let's do Verge. So we've been going about an hour, just a little over an hour now. I said I'd probably keep this to about an hour. Always got to go a little extra. Whoa, Verge finally reversing course here. So I had that big move off the lows yesterday, but man, here's another thing on volume too. When you have a move, how big was this? Verge went up 58, 60% in 16 hours. And at the top of a move, after it's already up, you see the RSI was up here at 83. This thing was going crazy. Everybody wanted it. And then you see the big volume spike. That's kind of the exhaustion buyers. The last of the buyers come in on this move. The can't take it anymore. Got to FOMO into this trade buyers. And then you tend to get a little bit of a pause. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it just crashes from here, but that's the climactic move. And the telltale sign is usually the biggest volume in the entire move right at the top. And so you're seeing a little bit of a pause now. You're seeing some pullback action. Certainly has turned the corner here in the last day or so, but maybe that's the low here. Let me do a fib analysis on this. How low did this go? Man, that retraced quite a bit, down almost to the 786 level. Right now you're getting a little bit of a counter trend rally, but this is short term, okay? This is very short term charts. This is the level I'd be watching in terms of it needs to retake that. Otherwise, this is just going to be a bounce into that, and then we'll see some more downside action. On the 4-hour chart, not as bad, right? You had that 4-hour breakout, seeing some pullback, trying to hold the moving average a little bit. If it starts to get back above, then that'll be good here. So not as bad on the 4-hour, especially considering this has already had several stair-step moves higher, and it's just kind of really putting in a good low in the longer-term charts, right? You see this big pullback, finally giving you more than just 1 or 2 days of upside. But this latest bar here is a big reversal bar, big reversal daily bar. So we've got 4 hours left on this daily, less than that, little over 3 hours. So unless this turns around and goes green again, that's going to be a big negative in the charts here. All right, let me go What moving averages do you use? Good question here. So depends on the time frame, but generally, and I'll keep a lot of the other ones kind of closed out. I talked about my triple moving average system that you can use on all that fun stuff. But just generally speaking, the one I usually have on the charts is the 10 EMA. It's the 10-period exponential moving average. Whether you're daily, 4 hour, 1 hour, you'd be surprised at how often this applies. But that's a good question, because somebody was asking me about moving averages the other day, and they will vary. I mean, if you look at the exchanges, GDAX, for example, has default moving averages on their charts, and they use the 12 EMA and the 26. And 12 is not too much different from the 10, so you can use that. And they use the 26, which I will also post on here. If you go to Binance, they use like I think it's the 7, 12, and 99 or something straight moving average, right? So they have 3 on Binance, and they're totally different. If you go to Polo, they're totally different. And so it's kind of interesting to see which moving averages the exchanges will list by default. But I will definitely use the 10 EMA. If I'm doing some longer term analysis, daily, weeklies, maybe you'll do the longer term moving averages. I just generally don't. If I'm looking at a daily chart, I honestly don't care about the 200-day moving average, stuff like that. In the stock market and other markets, I will. In crypto, I don't. It's just too lagging of a symbol, of a signal for any sort of trading. It's good maybe for like long-term analysis, how far are we one way or the other from a big long-term moving average, but in terms of a trading signal, it's just not really applicable. So yeah, no, this bull index is not free, it's proprietary, but I'm working on a way to share it without sharing the source code. I know TradingView has that, and it'll be coming, so you guys will have access to that if you want that, along with some other things. Like you could actually plot this on the chart here. So I've got some alerts that I set up for this indicator. When it crosses certain things, it got a little bit of a system, but you can see it's got that, like this was the crossing into the bull zone here, and kind of gives you that signal. On the 1 hour, you get the same thing, both up and down. And so I've got a few other things that I'll do. Here's a pocket pivots also crossing to the bull zone. So I'll be sharing some of these with you guys here once I get that all set up. But look at this, Verge, moving average, pulling back, bounced right into that 10 EMA so far. That's a little bit of a wall. All right, let's do a couple more, and we will have to wrap this up, guys. So we did POA, we did Cardano. iRadio is on. Yes, it is. 3 hours to go. Let's see here. Verge. All right. Appreciate all the feedback, guys. Appreciate you hitting that like button. Oh, Siacoin, that was interesting. I was getting some signals on that earlier. Let's go to Sia. It on here. Oh, this one is a name from yesteryear, has been flashing some signals that I follow and has been on my radar for the last couple of days going, what is going on with this guy here? Turning the corner, maybe? I mean, this one is just like fully retraced the entire move from last year. And I mean, I thought this was a goner. I thought this was just had no hope of coming back, personally. I'll be open. But yeah, I mean, just has came all the way back down, and lately has been a little bit stronger here. I mean, you're seeing some of this action here with the volume really picking up, and I haven't followed this one closely enough to know if there's any news that's driving it, any kind of announcements or project changes. If you guys know, please post it on there. But I don't know what's driving that. And but it has been looking very strong as of late, so no doubt Saya is trying to turn the corner here from a longer term basis. But yeah, interesting, huh? All right. I think that's it. Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Let me go back to BTC. We'll do one last look at Bitcoin, and we will call it a stream. I will be offline for a couple of days. I get back into town Friday, early Friday, so maybe, no promises, see how I feel. Maybe I'll do a live stream, kind of a weekly wrap up, but no trading for me for 3 days. Man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that. No charts. I'm going to try my best. It's going to be a little bit of an R&R, recovery, relax, retreat, rest, fun stuff for me. So we'll see how it goes. But looking at BTC, I mentioned this. If you didn't catch the stream at the beginning here, on the positive, one thing I'm looking at is this potential inverted head and shoulder pattern forming. We've still got 3 hours left on this daily bar. We need to see some good upside action, though, because near term, this is definitely bearish. And the level on a closing basis to watch is right here. This is the level that we don't want to see it close below, right around that 7,800 area. We've undercut a little bit, but from a closing basis, we're still above it. So we want to see it close above that. And then we got to get a green day in here, and maybe that'll start to turn the corner and change this pattern here. On the 4-hour charts, though, you can see that the declining moving average has just been the wall. Continues to be the place of resistance. You can see it bounces into there, bounces into there. And so very near term, we got to retake this area. So the area that I'm watching near term, 8,200, and then ultimately getting back above the point in price that broke down around that 83, 8,400 area. That was the neckline of that double bottom. If we can get back above that, then things will really start to turn the corner. And this will also translate into potentially that inverted head and shoulder really starting to form the right shoulder there. So those are the levels to watch here in the near term. If we really start to sell off, then that low that we had a week ago or so, that's going to be a key level to watch. If we break below that, could really start to accelerate at that point. So that's the 7,300 mark or so. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate you joining. If you don't already, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thanks for watching. Talk to you, everybody. Bye-bye.